Hello everyone. This is gonna be the final video of 2024. So I figured what better way to end the year than to go through a year in review of the garden. So I'm not just gonna go through kind of the biggest or even some of the smallest, but changes I really liked in my garden. I'm also gonna go over some of my favorite garden trips that I went on. And every year I do make a list of garden resolutions. So I'm gonna go over my list for 2025, but also look back at my list for 2024 and see if I met any of them, because it's been a while since I took a look at that list. Let's start off the year with what is probably the biggest change and what will also be the biggest change next year. And that's that we built a new deck garden. So now we have a whole deck on top of our garage for me to fill with plants. Although I'm going to try not to turn it into just a garden like the rooftop deck. So in the city, typically a lot of the time when you do have outdoor space, it has to be on top of your living space. So rooftop decks, garage decks are very, very common in Chicago. That's why I got into container gardening in the first place, because I don't really have ground to plant anything in. So getting 20 by 20 more square feet of space is just fantastic, because I very easily filled up the two decks up here already. So that's gonna be really fun. And it's gonna be a little bit different because it is more of a modern feel compared to my decks up here, which it's wood and brick, so I feel like it's a bit more rustic, but down there it's the black metal, the white tile. So I'm really excited about what I'm gonna do there next year. There are no plants out there yet. There are a bunch of planters that I bought even a year plus ago that are ready to go, but that's gonna be a big focus of mine for next year, is planting up that space. Now, if you wanna learn a bit more about the whole process of building the new deck, I do have one, if not two videos of that, also showing the containers, so I will link those down below. But I am so excited, and I can't wait to see what it looks like even in like July of 2025. Now, I'm gonna kind of jump to one of my resolutions for next year right now, because for that deck, the garage deck specifically, that is probably where we will sit the most often, because it is off of kind of the main level of the floor versus the rooftop. If we have friends over, it's more likely we'll just go out there. So I'm gonna try to make it a bit more formal, but I also want to make it lower maintenance. I want the rooftop decks to be more of like my working garden, so vegetables, cut flowers, still look really pretty, but down there I want it to be as low maintenance as possible. So what that means, a lot of perennials, which hopefully can withstand the winters in a container, so anything that's zone 4 or lower also can't be that big, because I want it to be able to live out the majority of its life in the containers. I also want to get every single container almost set up on drip. That way I don't have to worry about watering anything down there. The last point to make it a little bit more low maintenance for me is my husband. So he is the cook in the household. I don't know how I got so lucky, but I'm very glad this is how it's turned out. So what I want to do next year is, on the breezeway that connects our home to the deck, I want to make an herb veggie garden for him. So that would be the most, I guess, working garden area. So he can grow the things that he cooks with, and I'm gonna teach him how to take care, how to water, all of that fun stuff, so that will kind of be his area to take care of. Obviously, I will help in any way that I'm needed, but I'm excited just for him to learn, and I think he's excited to learn as well. So that was the biggest change. Now, as far as my decks up here, as a quick refresh, I have been gardening on our front deck, which faces the west, since 2020, which is the year that we moved in here. I really started expanding the garden onto the back deck that faces east in 2023 is when I think I first put the raised beds out there. So that's when I consider it the start of my garden. On the front deck though, I did add 2 more beds. I added 2 beds from Epic Gardening. And so now I have 6 raised beds out there. I have 6 raised beds. I have 3 30-gallon grow bags. And then I have my flower cart. And I think that is my limit in terms of weight, but also how much space is left on the deck. So for next year, I'm hoping to not use as many small pots and maybe just stick with the larger containers out there, again, so that drip is set up to everything. They don't need to run as often because they're in larger containers. So that's what I'm hoping for. Now, the flower cart, I really, really loved this year. So I love it every year. I've had it for at least, I think, 3 years now. And I'm a person that loves a color explosion. So when I was first planting it, I would just put anything random there. This was the first year I tried to make it cohesive, and I love how it turned out. So I'm definitely doing the Hydrangeas Silver Falls out there because not only does it look beautiful, it was pretty low maintenance, but it also covers storage, which is what I use the flower cart for. So you can't really see all of the pots that I have stacked up behind there. Another switch I'm going to be making next year is, as much as I love the Morning Glory climbing up the flower cart roof, which I've done for, this was the 3rd year I think that I planted it. This was the year I fell in love with Thunbergia, or Black-Eyed Susan vine. It doesn't spread as quickly as Morning Glory, but it's more condensed. Like, the canopy is thicker and it has really beautiful flowers, whereas my Morning Glory usually doesn't flower very often. So I think I'm either going to replace at least just that Morning Glory with the Black-Eyed Susan vine, but potentially anywhere where I had Morning Glory. So that's going to be one of the large changes. As far as anything else on the front deck, not a lot really changed. I have things that are kind of set up there where I know that I like them because I've been gardening there for so long. So I have my Comfrena bed, my zinnias in the middle. I did make one of the Epic Gardening beds my native raised bed. So we'll see if the native perennials that I planted in there come back. Fingers crossed this year. And some of them I will have to repot because they will get too large in that container and take over everything, but we'll save that for next spring. But that's kind of a look at my front deck. Now, the back deck is what I try to make more formal, I guess, between the two, where I sort of stick to a color scheme. And I loved the color palette this year. So a few of my favorite things from this year was the variety of China Asters I grew. I fell in love with China Asters in 2023. I grew even more varieties in 2024. I have even more varieties to grow in 2025. And I'm going to make separate videos on each type of flower that I'm going to grow. And we'll go through all the details on that coming up in the new year. But I just fell in love with that flower. So I'm excited to try even more. I also really enjoyed my bucket planter. So in February of last year, the winter is always a time when my creative brain starts going, but not necessarily my logical brain, but this one turned out really well. So I got a bucket planter. Well, I guess it was a bucket flower holder, and I drilled holes into the bottom of each bucket. So there were 12 buckets total, and it kind of just created this vertical planter, which I loved. I planted spring flowers, I planted summer flowers, and it turned out beautifully. Now, I have learned some things, like probably not growing Super Petunia Vista because it took over a lot of the other pots, but I'm really excited to have this planter now in my garden. I also got a new planter. So I haven't I did plant the bulbs. I haven't seen anything grow in this planter yet, but I got the planter sent from Cedar Planters that has the cover on it right now. I have the greenhouse in my garden closet that I'm going to cover it with in spring and see how that does with the 200 tulips that I planted in there. So I planted 200 tulips in that raised bed, at least a couple hundred in the 3 other raised beds I have out there. So I have 4 total raised beds on the back deck. And if I can get all of these tulips to bloom without rotting, it is going to be beautiful. So that is one of my hopes for 2025, is that my spring flowers don't rot and they actually bloom. Another thing I just wanted to mention that was really great this year was our neighborhood's garden walk. So I'm in the Sheffield neighborhood of Chicago, and we always had a garden walk. I think it goes back to the 60s. I think it started in 1969. And it was off for the first couple of years during COVID, which is when we moved into this neighborhood. So 2 years ago, it came back. Last year, well, this year, 2024, I volunteered and was a big part of the team that put it on, and it was incredible. We made a good amount of donations for this year's garden walk, and we had such a great turnout. And I love walking around this neighborhood and looking at all the gardens. I do it all the time anyway, but being able to go into people's yards where you might not necessarily be able to do that normally has been really great. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to continue working with that team in 2025. And I think as far as specific changes to the garden, those were the biggest ones of this year. So now let me actually pull up my 2024 resolutions, see how we did. Then I'll go through my 2025 ones, and then we'll talk about some fun garden vacations I went on. All right, I have the list from 2024 pulled up, and I looked at this fairly often in the spring and then haven't really looked at it since. So we'll see how many of these I actually fulfilled. The first one was use fewer smaller pots. And I wrote last year that I probably won't stick to this. I did an okay job. I think going from 2023 to 2024, I did use fewer pots, but still not as few as I think I can. My main problem is I will plant up all of my big planters in my raised beds, and then I have these extra plants just sitting there looking at me in all these 8-inch terracotta pots, and then I fill them up. But I'm really gonna try not to do that this year because I wanna make my garden a bit just lower maintenance overall, so I can really just spend the time enjoying it and be able to leave for a few days and know that it's getting watered on its own. So I am really going to try very hard to not have that many small pots on any garden. We'll see how I do. Next was plant only what I really love and turn down free plants. I did a better job. I don't think I turned down every free plant, but I have really narrowed down my plants to what I know works the best, the ones I love the best, and I do focus on those. But I do like to try a new one every year just to see if I fall in love, like with the China Aster. But I think I did a much better job not accepting free plants, so I'm proud of myself. Find perennials that can stay outside in containers, adding winter interest. I have the 2 evergreens. Have they survived this winter yet? I don't know because we are only in December, so I'm gonna see how they do. Hopefully I do continue putting perennials that survive so that I don't have to plant as much every year. So that is the goal. Obviously keeping things alive, whether it's the weather, whether it's root rot from the rain, although it's been a pretty dry winter so far. We'll see if they survive or not, but that is my goal at least. More perennials, more things that add some winter interest. Next on my list was interview other people in their gardens, and I specifically wrote down Lurie Garden, which is the garden in Millennium Park. I did not do that, and I wrote down Grandma's Gardener, and I did interview him in September. That video has done incredibly well. People love his garden, so I will link that down in case you missed it, but his garden is incredible, and I'm so happy because I'm very comfortable filming on my own in my space, not really as much interviewing other people, but it went very well. So I'm proud of myself for reaching out, asking, and just doing it. And once you do it, it does start to get a little bit easier. Next was be more involved with the Sheffield Garden Walk. Check on that one. And then get my horticulture certification, which I did. I just got my digital certification sent to me, and then I will get my paper one in the mail. Also, I took 4 classes through the University of Illinois for the certification. If I take 5 more classes, I can get my master's in horticulture. So we'll see if I do that or not, but 5 classes after taking 4, it seems like I can just do that again. We'll see what the future holds for that. Next was leave my garden unattended more and do less overall pest control, etc. I did do a lot less pest control, and I didn't really notice a change in the amount of pests that I have. In fact, I felt like I had fewer pests this year compared to years past. I don't know if that's because I barely did anything, so the beneficial insects were there and took care of it, or if I just didn't have, I feel like I didn't have as many pollinators and butterflies this year. I had some, but I feel like less than usual. That does worry me. So hopefully I see them come back again next year. But doing less and seeing that the results were still basically the same makes me realize that I don't have to do everything that I see in the garden and just be able to relax some more. That is my main goal coming into this year too. I think going from 23 to 24, I did spend more time in the garden not working. A lot of that time was spent with pigeons, but I want to do that even more. What's really difficult for me is to go outside with a book, sit in the garden, and not see a bunch of things that I could be doing. So I go ahead and start doing them and never actually read my book. I'm hoping with the garage deck, since it won't be as much of a hands-on working garden, that'll be a little bit easier. And that was the end of my 2024 list. Let's move on to the list for 2025. First is grow more fruit and vegetables. When I first started gardening at our old place in 2019, it was mostly fruit and vegetables, mostly just tomatoes and peppers, but it was very heavily vegetables. And then I found that you can order flower seeds online, because I always just went to Home Depot or a garden center. But once the world of the internet was opened up to me, I bought so many flower seeds. And when I go out into the garden, or even not going out into the garden, but when I look through the windows at the garden, it's the colorful flowers that are bringing me joy. I do enjoy eating my snap peas and my tomatoes, but I don't enjoy looking at them in the same way I enjoy looking at flowers. Plus, one of my favorite things to do is the giveaway bouquets. So the more cut flowers I have, the more bouquets I can make, which, by the way, I didn't have to buy any jars this year except for our garden walk when I made specific bouquets for that. But I was able to either save jars or get jars from other people. So that was fantastic. And I'm already saving them for 2025. But flowers have my heart. But I do feel like I missed out on having more vegetables. So I want to grow more tomatoes than I did. I like cherry tomatoes. They just seem to do the best in my garden. I want to grow zucchini, cucumber, eggplant, just the vegetables that I didn't really grow or gave up on and missed. I want to be able to eat more from my garden. I mean, yes, you can eat some of the flowers that I grow, but I want more edibles. I'm also going to make the fruit orchard, the mini fruit tree orchard on the garage deck, because hopefully whenever those trees that I have actually produce fruit, then we can just walk outside and grab an apple. My columnar apple tree did produce an apple this year, so that was really exciting. So I just want to be able to have more of a balance. It'll probably still be not 50-50 between edibles and flowers, but maybe not like, 90-10, just a little bit more balance between the two. Next on my list was make my garage deck garden low maintenance. I already talked about that. On my list, I wrote perennials and husband, because those are the ways I'm going to make it more low maintenance. Get drip set up on 90% of my containers. If I could do 100%, that would be ideal, but I know I'm going to have a pot on a table or on my flower cart that's not going to be easily accessible to drip, or I don't just want drip running up a table. So I'm not going to do 100%, but as close as I can get to 100%, that would be fantastic. Use more larger containers and fewer smaller pots, so we will see how good I do about that one. My next one is don't stop fertilizing and doing maintenance in August, aka the garden slump, because I am so good at garden maintenance up through about the end of July, and then the heat sets in, and then things are way more overgrown than they were in June when I was easily pruning some plants or whatever I was doing when they were a couple inches tall. So I definitely stopped for a while. And again, with the pest management, didn't really make an issue. Pruning, that got a little bit out of control. So I need to stay on top of that, and especially fertilizing, because that's when the plants are their largest. So they're gonna need more nutrients than when they were just tiny baby plants. So I am gonna try my hardest not to fall into the garden slump. Next, I wrote in all caps, give extra plants away. So we will see if I do that, again, to avoid having just a bunch of small pots with random plants in them. Relax more in the garden, and then film tours of other Chicago gardens. So again, I listed Lurie. I actually do have a potential tour that I'm going to do of the Baha'i Temple Gardens. I've been in contact with the person there. And then also, I think it's the Shakespeare Gardens at Northwestern. So I'll be able to hopefully walk you around those. I do want to try to get down to Lurie Garden, and then also more home gardens of all sizes, because again, Doranis' garden from Grandma's Gardener is nothing like mine. So instead of just seeing my garden all the time, you can get inspiration from other people. So that is going to be my goal. So those are my resolutions for 2025. So now I want to talk about some of the incredible garden trips I got to experience and some really incredible opportunities I got this year. First, with the trips, we went to Cape Cod for the Hydrangea Festival. I think it was early July. And we met up there with Eric and Christopher from Grow For Me Gardening, and then Sky from Hamilton House Designs. A team from Proven Winners was there as well, but we were not working with them. We planned this trip on our own to go out there, see each other, see all the hydrangeas. That area, so I've never seen so many hydrangeas in one place at Chatham Bars, and then just the beauty and fullness of them. You will be seeing videos and photos of them here. It was incredible. Now, I know that they also seem to have the perfect environment for it. So Chatham Bars was really great. We went around to, I think there were maybe 10 houses total. I don't think we hit them all, but you could sign up to have your house on it. It's just so beautiful. All of the homes there, whether it was hydrangeas or other beautiful plants, it was just stunning. And I really enjoyed my time there, even though it was very humid and very hot. But not only seeing the gardens, but getting to see my friends, because, I talk to my garden friends quite often, but we don't live very close to each other, so we don't necessarily get to see each other as much as we would like. However, Eric and Christopher did come out to visit us, and we took them around Chicago. That was in September. We had a really great time with them. Our plan for this year is to go visit them and see their garden in person, because I've seen all the photos, I've seen the videos, I love it so much, and I want to go frolic through it myself. So We still don't know exactly when yet. We're leaning towards more like early summer. I should probably let Eric and Christopher know when we decide the dates, but that is going to be the plan. And I'm so excited just to know that I have time to see them, but also finally get to see their garden in person. And then on to more hydrangeas. I went to the Bailey Nursery event. I got invited to that. I'm so grateful. It was the first, anytime I'm invited to any event, I'm grateful, but also confused as to how they know who I am, but it is very exciting. And we went out to Bailey Nursery. I frolicked through a field of hydrangeas. I've never seen a hydrangea field before in my life. And that's gonna be something I remember forever, just the stunning views. So that was a really incredible trip. I got to meet some more gardeners that I've followed and really loved for years, and then meeting them in real life. And I will say about the garden community, the people are great. I find nicer people in gardening communities than some other communities. I don't know if it's just plants make you happier, but I really enjoyed getting to meet people from all over the country or even in different countries and see them in real life. So that's been really fun too. And it also makes conversations, I feel like, a bit easier once you finally met in person. And then our last trip that we went on, this was just our regular road trip that we do up the coast of Michigan. We try to do it once a year, go up to Traverse City, if not all the way up to Mackinac Island. But we went up to Traverse City. We stayed at a winery. This is not garden related, but 6 kittens jumped out of a bush at me. It was the happiest moment of my life. Sorry to my husband. Our wedding was great. There were no kittens there. No, but I love cats. My husband knows this. If you remember that viral video of a bunch of kittens running out of the woods, or I think one kitten runs out of the woods at the guy who's filming, and then just hordes of kittens. And I've told my husband that that is my dream. And then it happened. And I am so happy. They actually did offer, because I guess a lot of kittens are kind of born on the grounds. They did say we could take all 6 of them back if we wanted to. And that was very, very hard for me to say no to. So anyway, that was the kitten part. But then we drove back down and I got to stay on the test gardens for Spring Meadows. So the owner has a cottage in the test garden. Very kindly, because I've been working with them, they let me stay in that cottage. And you woke up, you saw the sunrise over the river. There were beautiful hydrangeas everywhere. If that was my yard, I don't think I would ever get tired of it. Like sometimes I do wonder, would I get used to all of these flowers here if I lived here? But I mean, my gardens are not that large and I don't ever just get used to them or take them for granted. So the views were just absolutely stunning. I definitely want to try to go back. They said anytime we stop through Michigan, let them know. And if it works out, we can go visit again. And then we also got to tour Walter's Gardens. And I saw not fields of hydrangeas, fields of hibiscus, which is a plant that I've kind of fallen in love with. Now, I always appreciated it, but I thought it was too tropical feeling for my garden. But I have now fallen in love with the cookies and cream. It's the really dark purple leaves with the white flowers. I want to get some for the garage deck because I think that would look really pretty with the black and white tiles. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm just so appreciative of being able to just reach out and say, hey, we're going to be in town around this time. Is there any way we can meet up, get a tour? And everyone's always been so kind and said yes. So, I mean, I just can't imagine when I started, when did I start this account? 2021 or 22? Don't go back and look at the first videos. They are not great. But to be where I am now, I would never have guessed it. It's been incredible. And I don't take any of it for granted. So it's always nice to look back on your years because a lot of times I feel you can miss all the great things that happen. And also I just wanted to add that social media is a place where people usually share the best of their lives and what's going on, but that doesn't mean that's everything that's happened. And we have had some down periods this year, lost a family member very tragically. And so just like life, every year there are ups and downs. And if you've lost someone this year, I just want to say I feel you. But the down times do really make me appreciate the good times much more than I think I would without the bad times. Not that I want the bad times to happen, but it really does make you not take every day for granted. So that is the end of this video. Happy 2024, going into 2025. As I get older, the years seem to go by faster, but it is crazy. I mean, I feel like I just finished shutting down my garden at the end of November because it was so warm. I'm going to probably start my first round of seeds in March, and I'm going to do some garden planning in between then, some crafts, So it never really feels like gardening is done, even in Chicago. So let me know what some of your resolutions are or some of your best moments from 2024 in the comments, and I will see you in the next video next year.